Welcome back, YouTube. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a technical deep dive, but I want to help you. I want to get you and your family set up digitally. We're going to talk today about next generation firewalls. We recently were on a firewall package called Untangle, who had a home basic protect plan that we were on for $5 a month. Great plan, but unfortunately they've discontinued that product. So now we're going to be today installing OpnSense on that same hardware, and we'll be plugging in ZenArmor, which is a next generation firewall that will allow us to look at applications, do application-based blocking and filtering while still having the full capabilities of a firewall at the lower levels. So there are many products out there for firewall and next generation firewall. OpnSense is just one of them. You can install it on a machine you already have, so you don't have to pay for hardware. But if you want to pay for hardware to run a dedicated next generation firewall, I will leave links in the description. You can buy what we bought, the Protectli appliance, either from Protectli directly, from Amazon, or you can find it on eBay used. So ours is a few years old. We've been running this for a long time, and it's worked really well under Untangle, and now we're going to run it with OpnSense. Running a next generation firewall is a measure of digital security to block things that you don't want, to limit traffic, to save on your bandwidth on internet, but also to protect children from the internet, to protect yourself from the internet, and anything that you want to block. One more thing that's particular about the setup that we're going to do today is we do have a Pihole. If you're unfamiliar with Pihole, it's an ad blocker that you can run on your network to block ads on all devices. So we'll be setting up our OpnSense with ZenArmor to use the Pihole for the DNS. If you don't have a Pihole or DNS server, you can of course skip that step. So in case it's not clear, what I mean by appliance is this right here. This is a Protectli appliance. It's just a piece of hardware with a computer inside, and we're going to load an operating system, which is OpnSense, and put it on there. So let's go ahead and take a look at OpnSense. In case you're not familiar, it is a firewall software. You can, there's many different options, but you can run it on your own hardware. And if you go to opensense.org, you can of course download it, but you can scroll down and you can check out all the available features. It's quite powerful. It depends on your hardware, of course, what you have in hardware that you can use. Towards the bottom here, there's the link to ZenArmor, which is their next generation firewall extension. We will be installing ZenArmor probably in a second video here. But ZenArmor itself is feature packed. There are a lot of features here you can kind of browse through and check it out at zenarmor.com. Now, ZenArmor is quite powerful, and it's really going to expand the capabilities for your firewall. So go ahead and check that out. They do have a pricing plan and a free trial. And OpnSense themselves, if you don't have hardware, they do recommend Deciso. You can check out Deciso hardware at deciso.com and just click on hardware, and you can kind of see what you're dealing with. You're going to want to get multiple NICs, network interface controllers that you can plug multiple things into. You're at least going to need a WAN and a LAN side. So you can browse through these. Whatever you pick hardware-wise, I do recommend getting a lot of RAM memory, especially if you're going to be running ZenArmor. Now, you're definitely going to want to review hardware before you buy, if you don't already have something. Multiple network controllers for LAN and WAN side, and you're also going to want to have enough RAM and CPU. These are, if you look at OpnSense, I would try to target more reasonable or recommended hardware. Now, the RAM here, I would recommend more RAM, especially when you're using ZenArmor. It's got a web UI GUI that you can browse in your web browser, and it's also going to have elastic search capabilities and things like that that consume a lot of RAM, a lot of charts, a lot of memory is going to be consumed. The hardware that I'm using is from Protectli, and like I said, I'll leave links to all this, but it's been working great for us for many years. You're investing in a product and you want it to last, and it's been really great. We've had no problems with this hardware. If you buy your appliance direct from Protectli, you can have them install OpnSense for you, which will save you that initial step of installing and setting it up that we're going to go through, and then you just have to configure it however you want at home. And they actually make a little adjustments here and there at the beginning to make it comply with their hardware to make it a little easier. I also did follow the Protectli guide for this, how to install OpnSense. There was some useful information here, particularly as regards to swapping later on, the how and why to swap ports. So we'll get into that later, but I did find this useful, and they do have a guide here on how to install onto a USB and so forth. I did use a Mac, so for a Mac I was using Balena Etcher to burn that image. In order to get started, we're going to need to download OpnSense, and we're going to put it on a USB drive. So just if you're at OpenSense, just go to download. They only offer 64-bit as far as I can tell. VGA means I'm going to use a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse. And then you need to pick a mirror, just the download location, country, and location that you want to download from. And then you're just going to click download. Once you've downloaded it, you may want to verify your checksum. I'll leave that up to you. They do have instructions here. If you click that, double check, it will explain the steps to verify your checksum. I did do this, mine was fine, and so I proceeded. Now back on OpenSense, once you've downloaded OpenSense, you want to put it onto a USB drive. At least that's the method that we're going to use. VGA here because we're going to use a monitor. If you scroll to the bottom of the download page, OpenSense does have a getting started page. And that get started will not only show you minimum and recommended configurations for hardware, but also the steps, particularly with the command line to burn it to a USB, what to use on Windows. It looks like they recommend Rufus. And like I said, on Mac, Balena Etcher is what I used. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to install OpenSense from a USB onto our hardware appliance.
Okay, so here we are, the very first steps. We have plugged in our keyboard and our mouse, and we've got it hooked up to a monitor. We are going to move the boot order around. We've got number 4 here, SanDisk. We're going to move that to number 1. That's our USB flash drive. You should at least be able to recognize which one your flash drive is by the name, possibly the size, some other indicator there. Now, depending on your system, you want to save and exit that. For me, that was just hitting F4 and then say yes. And now it's going to reboot, and it's going to bring you to this screen. You can see you've booted into OpenSense. If you didn't get to OpenSense, go back and figure out the boot order again for your USB. So here you can either let it continue automatically, or you can stop it and then type boot. It should boot up into OpenSense, and as it's doing that, it's going to boot into OpenSense. It'll tell you a little bit of information. It'll give you your IP address and which interfaces are configured for the LAN and the WAN side. You're going to want to you could log in here as root or installer. So what we're going to do is we're going to install. So we're going to type installer for the login, and the password is the default password for the system is available on their website. That would just be OpenSense. Now you're going to have a few options. We're going to go through the install, which is, we're going to use ZFS. You can read up on the difference between UFS and ZFS. ZFS has more extended options. So we chose ZFS here. Either one should be fine. Next, you're going to have the option to pick your hard drive configuration. If you only have one hard drive in your machine, or you don't care about RAID, just pick Stripe. If you know you need RAID, then you know you need RAID. I'm not going to cover that here. Now the next screen is going to ask you what drive do you want to use? We want to install on the main drive here, which is our Kingston, not the SanDisk USB. So hit your spacebar to select hard drive that you want and hit OK or Enter key. Now it's going to give you a warning. Are you sure you want to do this? Go ahead and use your arrow key to go to the yes instead of no if you're ready, and hit Enter to install. Now it's going to install. It's going to say it's cloning the current system, which is basically the install, and it's going to go through 0 to 100%, and you're going to see it progress along, and it should get to the end. You should be at 100% and done. I'm going to walk you through what steps it's doing. It's going to install and verify and stuff. Prepare the target system. When it's done, it's going to ask you, it's going to say, do you want to change your root password? I would highly advise that you set your own root password here. That'll walk you through the steps to change that if you just hit enter for root password. And you can go through that. Once you're done, just go, it'll bring you back here, go down to complete install, and that'll exit and reboot, hit OK or enter. So after you do that, it's going to tell you, here's your IP address. It's pre-configured to this address, and it's going to reboot. We don't want to boot off the USB. If you do somehow accidentally boot off the USB again, it's going to ask you to go through the previous steps that we've already done. You probably will recognize that it's the same thing. So what I did was I just powered down the router, hard shut it down. And for me, that was just pushing the button. And then I removed the USB. We're trying to boot into the regular hard drive now. So now it does tell you where your WAN and your LAN are. These might be configured for me. They were backwards. I needed to switch these, and we'll talk about that later. But just recognize that it will tell you which network interface controller you have here, and you may need to change that in OpenSense. When you first visit the IP address, likely 192.168.1.1, you're going to get a certificate error. We're just going to bypass that for now. We're just going to, you can look at the certificate like this. You'll see it's OpenSense. And then in Chrome, at least, you can go down to the bottom here to proceed to the IP address. It says unsafe, but we're going to proceed. Just click that, and you should come to this screen where you have your login. Now, this will be the word username root and a password that you set earlier, or if you didn't set a password, this will be the default password, OpenSense. So type that in, and it should bring you to the wizard. Go ahead and follow the wizard, or you may choose to go into the menus yourself. So here, if you have a domain, as you go through the wizard, you can set your host name and your domain. For your host name, just pick a name, whatever you want to call your router, basically. Set your time zone. Now you can configure the LAN interface, which unless you really know that you want to change this, it's probably going to be okay. 192.168.1.1 and subnet mask 24 is pretty standard. Now, you can set your root password again here. If you've already done so, just go ahead and skip this. You don't have to do that again. Now it's going to do a reload. I did let this proceed, and it did refresh the page. If you give it some time and it doesn't refresh, just go ahead and refresh it yourself. All right, now you're done. Now it's going to say, you can click continue to the dashboard or just start navigating the menu. Your dashboard should look like this. It's going to give you some statistics about your system, the temperature, some of the disk, and the memory usage, and so forth. So this is quite useful to see how things are going. So now we can see the configuration for the LAN interface, and we can go over here to assignments. This is where we can swap them. So the LAN and the WAN for me were backwards, so I had to switch them. I just switched EM0 and EM1. After switching, you can see here that the WAN is now EM0 and the LAN is EM1. That matches what's written on the outside of my machine. So that was better for me to have it correctly assigned like that. Also, while you're on the assignment screen, you're going to want to assign more interfaces if you have more network controllers or Ethernet ports. So you're going to want to, at the bottom, assign a new interface for each one in the drop-down box for however many you have for anything that matches the EM format. So you can see here I've got my LAN and a WAN, and then optional 1, 2, 3, 4. I've already created those additional ports or interfaces. Just make sure that you enable them. If they're not enabled, go ahead and enable interface for each one, and make sure that you click apply changes. If you don't, it will not save. So go ahead and apply changes at each step. So this is an optional step. If you have more than one port that you plan on plugging things into, then it's all on the same network. You may, like us, want to create a bridge. So this can be a little tricky. It wasn't obvious, and I had to go read about what they want you to do here. OpenSense will allow us to make a bridge to bridge the Ethernet ports onto the bridge, which will be one LAN where we can connect DHCP to assign addresses out to everything that's plugged in. So what we want to do is go to bridge, and under bridge, we're going to list out all the ports that we want on our bridge. So I plan on plugging things into all the ports. So everything that's not WAN, I indicated as part of the bridge. Now, after reading a little bit more, I did come to understand there's kind of a tricky way to get all of the ports together and also get them connected to the one that you're already connected to, the LAN. So I did have to come back and take LAN out of the member interfaces here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the assignments, and we're going to set the LAN to the bridge that we just created. You can see what happens here, though. If you have LAN in the bridge and try to assign the bridge to LAN, you're going to get an error message. You can't do that, so you're going to take the LAN out like we discussed. So what we're going to do is we're going to uncheck LAN, and we're going to save this. And now we can assign the bridge to the LAN. Since we removed LAN from the bridge, though, we now have an extra Ethernet port that is hanging out there that we need to capture. So that's good. We're going to label that the LAN NIC. Now I can add back in to the bridge. So the next step we're going to do here is it's actually required for the bridge. They ask that you do this. So go to your system tunables. Now you're going to find the one that is NetLink Bridge PFIL member. And it asks us to set that to 0 and click save. Now the next thing you need to do is find NetLink Bridge PFIL bridge. And we need to set the value to 1 and save and apply changes. Now it's going to ask you to reboot. So go ahead, let it reboot. That's okay. We'll come back in here. Just make sure you log in again. At this point, I started browsing around. If you need to assign IP addresses on your network, if you're like me and you're running Pihole or something that blocks ads, under your LAN, you can find the static entries and but if you go to leases, it's a little bit easier. You can look at the current leases, what IP addresses are assigned to what machines, and you can assign them to a static DHCP mapping for this interface without going to do it manually. You can just click the plus sign. So the next thing we're going to do, we're at the point now where we're going to install ZenArmor. So the steps to do that are, we want to go to system firmware. We're going to look at plugins, just do a search in the search box, text box there for SUN, and you should see OS Sunny Valley. So we need to install that for ZenArmor. Let's do that first. And you should see that it's going to go through some of the steps. If you get this message, your installation is out of date, you just need to do an update to your OpenSense before you can install more plugins. So go back to system firmware status, check for updates. If you click that, you'll get this sort of message here that will tell you exactly what it's doing, and it's going to download and install. You can read this for the notes if you want. Scroll to the bottom and just close it. Now on your update screen, if you scroll to the bottom, there's an update button. So go ahead and click that. And it's going to update, and it's going to ask you to reboot. So go ahead and do that again. So now it's going to go through the steps. Before it reboots, it will go through all the installs. And you're going to see all these messages as it goes through. It's going to install all the updates. It says the upgrade is finished and your device is being rebooted. So go ahead and do that. If it doesn't come back, you may just need to wait for it and click refresh. But mine did eventually kick me out and ask me to log in again. So again, that would be your root with your password. Go ahead and log in again. Now we're going to go back to plugins one more time. System firmware plugins, search for SUN. OS Sunny Valley is what we want. So that's what we're looking for. Go ahead and click on the right there to install that. It will go through the updates. This one was really fast. After that's installed, we want to search for Sensei, OS Sensei. So we're going to install OS Sensei now. It's going to give you a prompt here. Do you want to trust this third-party software? If you do, go ahead and say install. And that took a little bit more time, but it wasn't too bad, just a few minutes. After that, it actually installed Sensei and the Sensei updater automatically. You should have ZenArmor on the left. If you don't have ZenArmor in your menu, just go ahead and refresh the screen in your browser. Mine did not show up until I hit refresh. So now you just need to accept the terms of service that they offer there. And here's where ZenArmor asks you to make a choice. Depending on your hardware, I actually have decent hardware, so I got all the options here. You may have a limited subset of options. If you know that you have a remote Elasticsearch database, or you know that you want to use something particular here, you can choose that, but that's unlikely for most people. And I just chose Elasticsearch 8 local database. Basically, you're just saying create your own database, and I chose 8 because, hey, 8's better than 5, right? So here we go, install a local Elasticsearch 8 database. It's going to give you a warning here. I don't know that it actually has Elasticsearch installed, but it didn't seem to matter. I just said confirm, go ahead and reinstall the new database. So here it is. It's going to install. It took a little while, but not too bad again. It's pretty quick. So it's installing all the database. Now, it'll bring you back to this screen. We're not done. Just go ahead and click next here. And now you have a choice of your deployment mode. I just left it here. I read up, but I didn't completely read up on all the options. You can if you want, but for me, this has been working fine. Routed, level 3 reporting plus blocking with emulated netmap driver. I did not check the checkbox for do not pin engine packet processors to dedicated CPU cores. I did read up on it, but it didn't sound like something I needed at this time. And then I chose all the interfaces. Go ahead and select all of them and set security zone to your LAN and let you know otherwise. So you can see here I've got all of them checked, and LAN appears next to all of them because I intend them all to be protected by ZenArmor. Now, if you click next, it'll take you to the subscription screen. I did not do a subscription yet, and I do not have a key. I just wanted to get started, so I did get me the free edition, and I picked the largest deployment size of 100 devices. I don't know why anybody would pick a smaller size. Just go ahead and pick the highest one you can under the free edition. You can get the 15-day free trial of business subscription. If you click that option, I think that may involve entering your email address. You can give it a try if you want, but otherwise, I just click the get me the free edition with 100 devices. Click next. Now it says you're almost done. Your installation is almost complete. Click complete to write to disk and start. So go ahead and click complete. Okay, now we're going to take a look at ZenArmor. On the left, you should see ZenArmor and then dashboard. Go to the dashboard there, and it should come up, and you should see something like this where your traffic is being routed. You should see your charts, and you should also see CPU, disk space, and memory, everything about your system.
All right, that brings us to the end of this video. We just installed ZenArmor on OpenSense on our Protectli hardware. You can, of course, choose your own hardware and do things differently, but this should be a way for somebody to get started, especially if you're not sure how to do all this. Hopefully this video helps protect your family, protect your network. Okay, stay tuned for the next video, part 2, where we're going to dive into ZenArmor and some of the features available both in the free tier and the paid subscription. So be on the lookout for that. Give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Homestead, y'all.